Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, we're going to talk about something, I guess, a little bit different today. I know normally this is a movie and gaming channel. I mean, I've also touched on some other things, like, I did, like, a video on ballets. I know I've talked, like, quite a bit about, like, musicals, but mostly, like, Phantom of the Opera. So I've kind of gone a little outside the movie sphere, but today we're actually talking about an opera. So it's a Vocaloid opera. It's only with like Miku as the voice bank, and she's like the star of the opera. So the reason I even found out about this, and I might just like maybe post this the day I record this, just because like the video I had learned about this from is also kind of recent. There's a Vocaloid channel, YouTube channel that I watch, called Minemi, and there was a video she made on like obscure Vocaloid concerts, and most of it was just concerts of like some of the voice banks in there used were like Miku, some of them were like some of the Krypton Vocaloids, but there was a couple of things mentioned in there that I thought was kind of interesting, and I checked out. Like, there's apparently a concert where it's like Miku singing and she's in like a hologram form with like an orchestra and stuff, like a live orchestra that you actually get to see on stage. But I think probably the most interesting to me part of the video was about this opera. It's called The End. It's, you know, what I'm going to talk about here. I didn't realize it, like, existed for so long. I'm, like, literally looking, I had, like, paused the video, so I'm, like, kind of quoting from that a little bit. It lasted from 2013 to 2018, and apparently was the first major Vocaloid live performance in Europe. I feel like that sounds about right, because I ended up finding it. It's on YouTube. It's like pretty easy to find, actually. And the subtitles for it were in French and in English. Like, they would appear on the screen at the same time, so I assumed it was like a French opera or something. But Miku didn't like sing in French or anything, and neither did the other characters. Like, Miku would just like sing and speak. Like, the whole thing was I think just in like Japanese, but it like constantly had French subtitles on the top. And I'm gonna, I guess, just be talking about my opinion on it. I wasn't going to make a video on it. It's just that, like, I decided to sit down and watch it. I was gonna watch it, like, at some point after I found out about it, and I had some free time tonight, and I thought, yeah, sure, I'll spend my evening watching this opera. And what was really nice is that I didn't know anything about it. Like, literally the only thing I knew was from that one small section of that Minemi video that I mentioned, that just had, like, some very brief information about the opera on the screen, which is pretty much just what I told you about, like, when was it performed, where was it performed, here's like a little fun fact about it, and that's kind of about it. Like, it didn't thankfully mention about the plot or anything, because honestly this is kind of a really weird opera, or just like performance in general. And I think it's like it's best to go into it blind. So I'm gonna say, if so far this sounds like a little intriguing, like I'll give you like a couple sentence summary before I continue with what I'm gonna say. It's and it won't be like spoilery or anything. It's basically Miku, who is like an AI in like the context of this story, and she's born and immediately is like questioning about like her humanity and stuff, and if she's like actually dead. And the whole thing is basically kind of going through like the stages of grief, kind of in the form of like an AI questioning both its like level of humanity, but mostly about how and when it's going to die. The whole thing is like about death, basically. That's why it's called The End. And Miku's like the only Vocaloid like voice bank and stuff that's actually used in this, but she's not the only character, even though she is the main character. There's like a couple of other ones. I'll show them on screen in a minute. And that's like pretty much it. It's like an hour and a half. I'll be talking about it a bit more, don't worry. I just wanted to mention about that, because what I was originally going to say is, if this concept sounds intriguing, just like stop here, go check it out. I don't really want to like spoil anything for you, because I think, like I said, it's best to go into this blind. Okay, I'll keep talking about it. This illustration I find really interesting. I want to talk about Miku's outfits in this as well. I'm also going to actually show you a picture of like what the opera looks like and stuff, because I feel like that kind of helps explain it a bit more. I found out her outfits are designed by Louis Vuitton. I think that's really cool. Like for the entire opera, Miku wears this like little black headband that makes me think of like Alice in Wonderland, and all of her outfits are kind of similar to each other. Like some of them are like dresses. There is one that's like on this poster, but they're all these like checkered patterns, except I think her last outfit, which is like yellow. I think it's like a yellow dress towards the end. I didn't really know like the symbolism of those outfits besides the fact that they look really cool. But yeah, that's like pretty much her outfits. The checkered patterns, if anything, because I think there's like a green one as well. She ends up with like a white headband with that at some point. They're all really cute. But the checkered patterns, I feel like maybe kind of fit with the story, because there's a lot of like glitching effects throughout the entire opera on the screen, because it takes place on a huge ass screen. But I think it's actually like multiple screens. It's almost kind of like more of an animated film, if anything, rather than like a concert and stuff. Like I wasn't sure if it was more of like a concert format that was like a music video type thing, but no, it's like a full-on opera and stuff. But the checkered patterns were making me think of like I'm trying to think of the right words. You know when you have like a 3D model or something and there's like the texture for it missing and it's just like the checkered patterns and stuff? It was kind of making me think of that, and I feel like that would sort of fit with the story of like, it's about like humanity to like an AI and like the concept of death and stuff, and if she has the ability to die, does that like basically make her human and stuff, and kind of about sort of finding her identity as well. Okay, so I'll show you what it looks like, because like I said, Miku is not the only character in this, because there's also these characters, and the fourth one that's not shown on here is a disembodied voice. So the creepy Miku in the back, I don't really know what that is, because the thing is with the story is like it's surprisingly more straightforward than I expected it to be. The problem with it though, or I guess with me really, is I kind of was losing I was like really interested in the beginning and the end, but during like the second act of it and like the middle, I was kind of losing interest, and I didn't like stop watching. I just kind of like kept skipping around, because there's like, I mean, there is music. There's probably at least like 7 songs in this. I'm like making that number up, but it's mostly a lot of dialogue in like almost every scene, so you kind of do have to be paying attention, so I probably like missed some things. It's very like kind of surrealist too, especially with the visuals. Sometimes the visuals were like kind of confusing, where at the beginning there's like a lot of rooms that are like kind of like the inside of a house or like an apartment or something. There's like this one section of it where everything's like covered in fire. There's another part where Miku is like flying in this area that kind of looks like it would be like a dummy level in a video game. So I'm assuming it's all supposed to be, because she's like supposed to, I don't think they ever really directly say that like she's an AI or a program, or if she's like literally a Vocaloid. I mean, she does talk about singing sometimes, so I just kind of assumed she was a Vocaloid that lives in like a digital world, but you can kind of like presume that. But yeah, the weird creature in the back, I don't know, it's actually like much creepier when it's like closer to the camera and stuff. It's like this weird corpse looking thing with a kind of freaky mouth that has like the Miku pigtails and stuff. She interacts with it more like towards the end of the story, and at that point I was kind of assuming maybe it was like I don't know, I'm making this up, like some kind of like personification of like death or whatever, with the fact that she sort of kind of joins with it a little bit towards the end. And I was thinking with that and with her companion, who is this like mouse creature. I assumed it was like a mouse, the like blue animal next to her, but it could be like a hamster or something. I just thought mouse because it has like the big ears and stuff. The face of it kind of creeps me out. I feel like it's supposed to be designed to be like cutesy with like the big eyes and the little mouth and stuff. But there's something about the look in its eyes where it looks like scared all the time, and it doesn't really emote that much. I do like the addition of like the mouse and the little like blush. But the mouse like creature is kind of weird, where it like talks to Miku, but it also talks to like the disembodied voice, who I'm not sure. I assumed it's like a person that's like separate from Miku. I thought maybe it was like the overseer of her like digital worlds or whatever. We never actually get to really see what the disembodied voice is, especially because like there's a couple of times in the opera where Miku has like a cell phone, is like talking to someone. But there's this thing that happens whenever the disembodied voice talks, where it says something and then the characters will say the same thing. Like they just like keep repeating each other, especially with this mouse creature. I didn't really like understand that or anything. I actually kind of assumed that the mouse creature and the corpse thing in the back were kind of like extensions of Miku, not just because rather than like separate beings, not just because the corpse like creature has like the Miku pigtails and everything and is like very much like shaped like her, but the mouse creature has her coloring as well, of like the ears kind of resembling like her pigtails a little bit, and she has this the mouse creature has like this little green tie, kind of more like Miku's original outfit. It was kind of making me think, because it's designed to look so cutesy and like vaguely looks like Miku, if it's supposed to represent like the Miku that everyone thinks about, you know, with like her original design, where a lot of people, you know, when she's not dressed in these like Louis Vuitton outfits, of like how Miku, a lot of people see her as like very cutesy and happy and stuff, and that's how she's portrayed in a lot of things like outside of like the Vocaloid sphere and stuff. So I thought maybe the mouse was supposed to be almost like a mascot in that sense, like the more of the mascot side of Miku. The corpse thing, I don't know, probably relates to like how this entire opera is about death. The mouse creature, actually, the more I keep staring at it, the more I keep thinking of like, because it was bothering me the entire time of like, what is this design, especially the eyes, are like reminding me of? It reminded me of like the sidekick animals in the Barbie movies, the animated ones, which I wish I still had my reviews for. I used to do reviews for those on my other channel. But I feel like the eyes of this like mouse creature kind of remind me of that, and it like creeps me out. Specifically, it's making me think of the character Tika the elephant, who's from Barbie and the Island Princess, where even if you haven't seen that movie, you've probably seen a picture of that elephant somewhere, because it's used in like reaction images and stuff. But the mouse creature in this, I don't know, like the way it interacts with Miku, I don't think it's even given a name. I don't actually think like anyone in this is given a name, and that's kind of the other reason I assumed the animal and the corpse thing were like extensions of Miku and stuff, because like why would they have different names, you know, otherwise. But the mouse like creature, it moves in like a very robotic way, and it kind of like protects Miku and keeps an eye on her and stuff. Like at the beginning of the opera, it says about like how it needs her and whatever, and she talks to it a lot. And then at the end, it gets like really weird, or like towards the end, like one of the crazier things about the opera is eventually the two of them like physically merge, and that merging causes Miku to turn into this like dragon, but it still has like Miku's face and stuff. I don't know why she turns into a dragon. And then after that happens, I kept looking at the mouse creature and I was like, is it secretly supposed to be more like dragon like looking? And I just never noticed with its features. But no, it's like this cute little mouse mascot looking thing. It doesn't have the dragon features. But yeah, I don't know why Miku turns into a dragon. She turns into a dragon at one point and she starts flying around and she's like talking to the mouse creature about basically like how she wants to be her own person and stuff. And she's kind of more on the acceptance level of like how she's going to like die at some point or whatever. Actually, it was kind of weird to me because like it's very obvious from like the beginning and like the first lines of dialogue that this is going to be a story about like an AI and its perception of death. I kind of just assumed from the beginning that it was going to end with like Miku dying, but at the same time I thought like, why is she like constantly thinking about death? Because I was thinking like, if she's an AI, you know, like how is she even going to die or anything unless her like program's closed out or whatever. And I was like, why is she spending her entire life worrying about death instead of like trying to live? But she really doesn't get like the chance to live. She like constantly talks to the mouse creature about like how they're doing the same thing over and over again and stuff, and she's always in these like same kind of environments and stuff. She doesn't really get to go anywhere by choice or really do anything. But yeah, when she's in the dragon form, she like de-merges or like separates or whatever from the mouse, and it gets like kind of weird where it's like the mouse face appears on like part of the dragon and Miku kind of appears on the dragon, like they're both splitting away from it as if it's like a separate creature, and then when they get fully separated they're just back to themselves again. So I don't know why like a human and a mouse creature combining just forms like a dragon. But the part when the dragon flies around it's kind of cool. It flies around in this weird like blocky place and stuff. That's part of the way, you know, it's like they're in some kind of like digital world, but there's constantly like these glitching effects and stuff as well. I assumed it meant like the program and the story that like Miku's in is maybe like, I don't know, broken from the start and eventually going to start down or shut down. And there's this like whole thing at the beginning where at the beginning and the end actually, and I mean not the end as in the name of the opera, but the end of the story, where it's this thing, the mouse creature and the disembodied voice, when like Miku's like quote unquote born or whatever, are talking about light and how when the light touches an object it brings it into existence or whatever. And then at the end, when spoiler, Miku dies, which I don't even get like how she dies. It's kind of like she's running and breaking through these glass walls and saying about like accepting her death and stuff, and then she takes like a really long time to die, and then it kind of loops back to the beginning a little bit where she's falling in this kind of unnatural pose and saying like, oh, do you think I'm asleep or dead? It doesn't matter, it's like the same thing. And she starts talking about the light again, but this time it's that the light covers everything or whatever, as if she kind of doesn't exist. Her like death scene at the end is also interesting because there's like one part where the screen is just like completely black, and she's not on it, neither any of the other characters, and it just has like text on the screen, and she's saying about how she can't do all these things, and she's wondering where her mouth is. And she can't, it says something as if she's talking to the audience. She keeps referring to someone as like you and saying like, I can't tell the difference between you and I, and sort of this kind of horror in the sense. It's like one of the scarier parts of the opera in my opinion, where I'm assuming at that point if she's like dying, you know, because we can't see her on the screen, but she's still talking, and it sounds like her mind's kind of coming apart a bit where she can't feel her body or anything. I'm assuming at that point she just has like no form, no like physical form at all, but still kind of exists because she hasn't died yet. But the fact that she's like completely sentient during that just sounds like really scary. It kind of reminds me of some of the dialogue from Doki Doki Literature Club that Monica says about like when the game gets shut off and she like permanently freezes or something, or is in this like void until it gets turned back on. And I always find that as like a really interesting concept with AI characters, because most of the time they're portrayed with some kind of like physical form, whether it's like humanoid or not or whatever, but the fact that they can exist where sometimes they don't need like a physical form, but they're still like conscious in those moments, it's kind of spooky. What else? I feel like I almost need to like scroll through it again. I'm gonna actually pull it up on my end, and I think that'll kind of help me with stuff, because I was just kind of looking at it on Google Images. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say really quick, I really like the art style for this, but especially of Miku. I think in this style she looks so pretty. I specifically love like her eyes and her hair. Her hair has so much detail, especially with a certain scene I'll talk about later. You get to see like all the details like in her hair, it's like pulled apart and stuff. But I really like her eyes as well. I feel like I was only noticing them after the dragon scene, because her eyes are kind of a similar color to the dragon. They're like this sort of blue-green gradient and stuff. Because I know a lot of the time Miku's either drawn with like blue or teal hair. I don't know which one's supposed to be official, but I always kind of, like, me personally, prefer the teal look. I feel like it just looks so much more vibrant. But I really especially like her face as well. She has like these kind of tiny nose and mouth, and especially her eyes too. I feel like a lot of the time, Miku's always drawn in like an anime art style and stuff, and like very cutesy and everything, but I feel like with this style it fits with this kind of darker storyline and about Miku being more of a person than like a mascot. In a sense, she just kind of looks like a bit more realistic while still looking like kind of cute. I think it's cool. I think it makes the whole like opera more memorable and stuff, of having like its own like specific design of Miku and everything. Yeah, let me pull it up really quick. Hold on. Okay, I pulled it up because there was some parts I remembered I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to like look at the visuals. I think one of the coolest things with this, there's like a couple things actually, is just the use of the screens, because there's these like giant screens. I don't know how many of them there are. I can't really tell if it kind of looks like it's one big screen and then like two other littler, no, it's like one big forward screen and then like three other screens that are behind it, and like the main screen kind of looks like a kind of holographic a little bit, like a bit transparent. And just the use of those throughout the whole opera is really cool, honestly, like to the point where I can't imagine this just being on one screen, especially with how it makes things like the scale of things and size of like Miku will be tiny and there will be like stuff behind her, whether it's a background or another character or something, that'll be like really huge. And the fact that like everyone including Miku is on a screen means you can kind of like overlay these people on top of each other and make these like really weird effects. Something I find that's interesting is there's kind of this sort of horror aspect to it, especially with Miku, like elements of her that are used in these kind of like unnatural ways where she'll like, as her normal like sort of person self, tinier, will still be on the screen. It's like she's interacting with like these weirder versions of herself. Like I'll give you a couple examples. Like towards the beginning, there's a part where Miku is kind of just floating around, and there's actually a lot of parts where she's just like floating around on the screen and stuff, and there's this silhouette. I'm assuming it's her, but it's like these giant cartoony eyes, where one of them's like gold and one of them's green, even though Miku has like the same colored eyes throughout the whole thing. And I just assumed the silhouette was another person, but you can see what looks like an outline of hair that I'm assuming is like the twin tails and stuff, and it's like a voice describing about someone having the same length and color and whatever as like quote unquote yours, but not looking like you at all, is the line. I'm assuming it's like, oh okay, no, and then because there's like the creepy eyes behind Miku, and then I thought it was Miku as well on the screen, like her normal self, but it's actually the like corpse looking Miku, and it's kind of creepy. You might hear me like clicking around in the background. I'm like trying to click through this a little bit to find certain parts. The creature that's being described is the corpse like looking Miku, and that thing just looks so freaky where you'll get like close up of its mouth and stuff, and it doesn't have any eyes. It's this open mouth that walks around swaying in this like but it's like walking in place. It's kind of more like an alien version looking of Miku. So there's like the big cartoony eyes. There's a couple of parts where there's like a giant mouth that speaks behind Miku. One of my favorite parts that's like kind of freaky looking is there's like this being that Miku interacts with every once in a while, and at the end when it appears it's mostly just like eyes and stuff, but towards the beginning, and it's one of the parts that uses like the multiple screens, it's like these strands of Miku's own hair, and it's almost like a bunch of tentacles, and they're popping out from like both sides of like the big screen, where it just kind of looks like tentacles, but it's like her blue hair. And then on like the side screens you see these two eyes, but it's as if like a face has been split in half. I mean, I'm assuming because of the hair and stuff that it's like supposed to be Miku, but it's like this other being she's talking to that she's like going there for advice and stuff. Hold on, let me see what else. There's a part towards the end when Miku's finally not wearing like the checkered clothes and stuff, and she has this like yellow outfit, and she talks to this being that just has like gray skin and these giant eyes, and the eyes just appear everywhere to the point where like Miku is able to like stand on its eyeball between its like eyelashes and stuff, and they're having some kind of like disagreement or whatever, where one of them is like not really understanding the other, and they're saying like how they'll never speak again. And it's really cool but kind of creepy where like Miku, this thing like completely dwarfs her and stuff. It's like huge where she can like stand on its eye. It makes some really cool shots. And I think it's also the being where like the talking mouse comes from. I can't tell what this thing's supposed to be, or how many of these like other beings are supposed to be like extensions of Miku and stuff. Like there's a couple of times where she like talks to somebody on a phone. She has this there's this part where there's like these gray faceless like 3D models and stuff that I think are supposed to represent like humanity and like people going through their day and doing stuff and whatever, and Miku kind of wonders about them. There's like a whole song where she's in this like fire area and wearing like a gas mask or something. I think it's like some other version of her where she learns that she's like going to die someday, like she's born and she doesn't know about that, about like the fact that she'll eventually die. One of my favorite lines, I think I mentioned earlier, was she's talking to the like mouse creature, and she's saying about like here, I'll just quote this from what's on the screen, that I'm no longer me because dying will make me almost human. It's like towards the end when she's kind of having to think of what she's been through and about how she'll like die and stuff, and that if she has the ability to die, it'll make her like more human than machine in a sense. Now, I'm trying to scroll through the dragon thing. It's such like a weird kind of design. Trying to see if I'm like missing anything. Either they talk about like this woman sometimes that doesn't have a name, who they reference with like a flock of crows. I think it's supposed to be like the corpse like creature that's like trying to look like Miku or something. Let me see. But yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of people in this that Miku talks to and stuff. Where at the beginning she's more like guided by all these other beings and by the mouse-like creature and stuff. There's like these different people she talks to kind of on her journey, and then she's mostly like by herself towards the end until she eventually dies. And it gets like kind of freaky when she dies, like I mentioned, where she is talking to somebody. I'm assuming it's like the viewer, and then she like merges with the corpse-like creature. It's freaky because she gets to meet it like face to face, and it like gains her head, and it almost looks like it's going to like eat her or something. But then she becomes the corpse-like creature and like explodes into light or some shit and like dies. So I'm wondering if like it's like a future version of her basically. And this is all like speculation. Even as I'm scrolling through it and after watching it, there's still so many things about it. Like even though with the dialogue it's pretty straightforward, that I feel like it can still be like difficult to understand like who all these like people are and stuff. But I think the corpse-like creature is maybe like the sort of future version of Miku in a sense, like the one that is going to die. And she's like, it feels like a lot of this is on like some kind of like time loop thing, and like she's kind of guiding herself towards like accepting her death. I don't really know. Okay, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm gonna put the other image back on screen actually. Oh, and the reason with the blood coming out of her eye is like the last scene of this, when she's like in this weird pose and saying about like if she's sleeping or dead, and it's like up to you, because it kind of ends ambiguously in that sense of like it's up to you if she like died or whatever. But there's like a bloody tear that comes out of her eye. And there's an earlier part of the opera where she talks about some time when she cut her finger and it bleeds, and I guess she's not supposed to do that because she's supposed to be like an AI and stuff. So I'm thinking maybe the blood like coming out at the end when she dies is kind of like a representing like she sort of became human, even though she can't like physically become human. Yeah, I don't know, but anyway, I just wanted to kind of babble about it a little bit because oh yeah, the songs, I don't really know any of the song titles. I'm gonna have to look up, I doubt I'll find it though, if this soundtrack to this is available on like Spotify or on YouTube, because I've seen like some individual videos pop up of like some of the songs. I saw that for at least like one of the songs. But I doubt it, because that's part of the reason I wanted to talk about this, because outside of that like Minemi video I'd seen, and like a couple of videos where it's like performances of the actual opera itself, I don't really see like anything about this like online other than the fact that like, hey, it exists, and some like very brief information about it. Like I tried looking on Reddit, because that's what I do sometimes when I'm like confused about a movie or whatever. I wanted to see like, you know, besides the YouTube comments section for the video I watched, like I want to know what people's thoughts were. If there was, I was kind of hoping there would be like an official like plot summary of some kind going over the events. I feel like it would like make more sense to me then, or just even what people thought about it. I couldn't really find like anything, and I was kind of disappointed because I thought finding those kind of things would like help me understand it more and stuff. But yeah, the music's really cool. It's all like electronic and stuff. The only vocals are Miku and these like computerized voices and stuff. There's probably like at least 2 or 3 songs that I really liked that I'd want to hear again, especially the song that Miku sings at the end as she's like dying and stuff. But I think easily my favorite thing with this, besides like, oh gosh, I forgot about one of the Miku creatures, because I'm like scrolling through as I'm like talking and stuff. There's like this big purple creature that has these 2 red eyes and this like glowy antenna things that are in the position of like Miku's pigtails. It's like this giant purple creature with these two arms. It's not really that like humanoid or anything. It is a little bit. I think it's like the creature that Miku is talking to on the phone, because throughout the musical she's like, I mean not the musical, the opera, she's talking to someone that she misses them, especially her little speech at the end, where she's like accepting going to die. She's talking to who I'm like presuming is the viewer about like, even though I'm going to die, I'll never leave you, I'll like be in your heart forever, and I'll like keep singing and stuff. But yeah, I think the visuals were my favorite part. I think still my favorite part of it, like visually, was when there's like the giant individual strands of Miku's hair. It's like she's talking to herself, but it's like a more monstrous version of herself. But the ending, I think, was kind of my favorite part, where Miku's like accepting her death and kind of talking about like what does happen to us when we die, you know. But it was really cool to experience, even though it was kind of really confusing to me. It like bummed me out at first when I watched it. Like I wasn't gonna make a video on this. I was like looking through my YouTube playlist to like see if I can find something kind of happier to cheer me up in a sense. And then I went to go shower, and then I just couldn't get this opera and its like visuals and stuff out of my head, and I was like, oh okay, I think I want to just talk about it, kind of get it out of my system. But yeah, it was cool. If it wasn't for that Minami video, I wouldn't have known about its existence at all. Apparently it also has a Letterboxd page. I find that kind of funny. So maybe if I had looked up Miku on there or something, I probably would have stumbled on it or whatever. But I kind of wish that it was more popular. I don't really know how popular it is, because most of the YouTube comments for the video, you know, that I watched the performance and stuff, were just people saying that they saw it live and how much they loved it, and that was kind of about it. But yeah, I've never really found anything in like the Vocaloid community that's like this before. And I just think the existence of this whole like super dramatic opera about like, it's like a Vocaloid opera, Miku's the main character, it's her voice being used, but I like that it isn't really about like Vocaloids or anything, or like Miku as a character. Miku's almost used like as a vessel in a sense, where it's less like Miku and more about like her in the role of like a character in a play, kind of a vibe. And she's kind of used as like a vessel in a sense to just talk about like fictional artificial intelligence and stuff. Where I guess her being a Vocaloid is like kind of the thing of it. I always find that really cool, because like Vocaloid doesn't have like any canon or whatever, like the characters don't have ages. I mean, they're not even really like characters, they're literally just voice banks. They're basically like instruments that are given, you know, illustrations to like personify them, and that's pretty much it. So that way you can give them whatever personality you want in like songs and stuff. And people do like a lot of the portrayals of Miku are like mostly like making her like really happy and stuff, and it's like very cutesy things. There's a lot of course like dark stuff and other things as well, or like her being represented as like a diva and stuff, but you can represent her as anything, and I always think of her more in like the cutesy sense, because that's kind of how she kind of comes off to me. And like, you know, she's in like Fortnite, for example, and all kinds of stuff, where I feel like a lot of people, compared to like other voice banks and stuff, that Miku's more treated as like a mascot character rather than like an instrument or anything, especially compared to like other Vocaloids. And I like that with this opera, you know, it's not really like she's the happy-go-lucky Miku, or even really just Miku. She's just kind of like a person that's trying to discover the meaning of like being human and about death and stuff that I feel like Vocaloids like aren't really ever kind of portrayed in this way. I mean, they are with songs. There's like some very famous songs, ironically enough, with Miku that do go over these like themes and stuff, but to have it in the context of it being like its own original story and stuff rather than just like one self-contained like song. I mean, there's like multiple, like a ton of songs about death. There's songs about like freaking everything in Vocaloid, honestly, or that Vocaloids are used in. But the fact that you can do like anything with Vocaloid, I love that there's even, and by anything I mean anything, where you could have, you know, there's concerts, there's characters, there's songs, you have Miku in like live action commercials and whatever, but then the fact that you can also just have stuff like this where you can use Vocaloids in such a creative way as part of like a grander art piece, in a sense, I just think that's really cool. I would love to like honestly find more Vocaloid stuff like this. I don't know if whether it's like operas or just more as like experimental Vocaloid art stuff, or just really pushing the limits of like I don't know how you can use them and stuff. It was honestly just so cool. I feel like I don't really have any words for it. Not that I absolutely loved it, but I feel like I loved it in the sense of like the themes of the story and what they could honestly do with like all those screens and stuff. It was just crazy. I've never really seen anything like this, so I'm not really sure how to fully describe it or react to it. I kind of am at like a bit of a loss of words, honestly, but it's really cool. I kind of, like I said, I wanted to make this to kind of bring more attention about it because I just found out about it like earlier this week and I was like, whoa, and you know, and then I watched it and it was just really cool, so I wanted to talk about it, my thoughts on it. I know I talked a lot about how confused I was because I think it's a thing that more people should know about. You know what, yeah, I am gonna just post this on the day I record this just so I can get this out faster and stuff, but it was really cool. I don't know if I'll find anything like this again. Glad I found it, glad to know it exists. Like I said, it's free on YouTube. There's like multiple videos of like different performances of it and stuff, and it has like English subtitles. It has English subtitles and French subtitles, so like, hey, if you can read one of those languages, you're good. All right, bye bye.